Rome built its legions to defeat armies. They were trained for open battle, fortified camps, disciplined marches, and close combat. Their shields locked together. Their commanders expected enemies to attack from the front. But some Roman armies were destroyed by forces the legion was never designed to handle. They were trapped in forests, exhausted by invisible arrows, buried under collapsing defenses, starved inside cities, destroyed by weather, panic, terrain, and even their own commanders. The Roman legion was built to survive war. War did not always fight fairly. Cannae, 216 BC. Rome entered the Apulian plain with an army so large that victory seemed almost unavoidable. Two Roman consuls commanded roughly 80,000 Roman and allied troops against Hannibal's smaller Carthaginian force. The Romans trusted their greatest advantage: mass. Their infantry formed an enormous block and advanced directly toward the Carthaginian center. The soldiers expected Hannibal's line to break under the pressure. At first, it appeared to happen. The Carthaginian center bent backward, giving the Romans exactly the illusion they wanted. But the retreat was deliberate. As the Roman infantry pushed deeper, the Carthaginian line curved around them. On both sides, Numidian and Iberian cavalry swept away the Roman horsemen. Then they attacked the Roman rear. The Roman formation became a prison. Thousands of legionaries were packed so tightly together that they could barely raise their weapons. Men in the front ranks continued pushing forward, while men behind them pressed against their backs. The army could not retreat, spread out, or turn. Hannibal's soldiers closed the circle. The Romans were not defeated by a stronger wall of infantry. They were crushed by their own numbers. Ancient sources give different casualty figures, but tens of thousands of Romans and Italian allies were killed or captured. Consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus died on the field. The Roman army that entered Cannae as an instrument of conquest became a mass of trapped bodies. The legion had enough strength to win a battle. It had too much strength to escape one. Carrhae, 53 BC. The Roman army did not lose because its soldiers were outnumbered by infantry. It lost because the enemy refused to fight like Romans. Marcus Licinius Crassus marched into Mesopotamia with approximately 40,000 men, including 7 legions. He expected the Parthians to meet him in a conventional battle. Instead, the Parthian commander Surena used an army built almost entirely around mobility. Horse archers surrounded the Romans and kept their distance. They fired continuously, riding away whenever the legionaries tried to approach. A Roman soldier could survive a charge. He could survive a sword fight. But he could not easily reach an enemy who never stopped moving. The Parthians had prepared enormous supplies of arrows. When their quivers began to empty, camels brought fresh ammunition across the desert. The attack did not pause. Roman shields became heavier with every impact. Men collapsed from wounds, heat, and thirst. The legions formed defensive squares, but the formation only made them easier targets. Crassus sent his son Publius with cavalry to drive the horse archers away. The Parthians withdrew, drawing the Roman detachment farther from the main army. Then heavily armored cataphracts attacked from another direction. Publius and his men were surrounded. His severed head was later carried on a spear toward the Roman lines. The psychological effect was immediate. Soldiers who had expected rescue now understood that no cavalry was coming. Crassus attempted to negotiate after the army began to collapse. During the meeting, violence broke out, and the Roman commander was killed. Most of the surviving soldiers were captured, scattered, or forced into retreat. The Roman legion was designed to close distance and destroy its enemy. At Carrhae, distance itself became the weapon. Teutoburg Forest, AD 9. Rome had already declared Germania pacified. Governor Publius Quinctilius Varus believed the tribes east of the Rhine were under control. He was moving through the region with 3 legions, auxiliary troops, cavalry, servants, and camp followers. Then Arminius arrived with news of a local rebellion. Arminius was not an obvious enemy. He had served alongside the Romans and understood their methods. Varus trusted him enough to follow his report into unfamiliar territory. The Roman column entered a landscape that turned military discipline into confusion. Heavy rain transformed the ground into mud. Dense forests blocked visibility. Narrow paths forced the soldiers into a long, vulnerable line. Roman shields collided with trees and equipment. Wagons slowed the march. Then the Germans attacked. They did not offer a single battle. They struck from concealed positions, vanished into the forest, and attacked again. Earthworks and barriers blocked the Roman route. The legionaries could not form their usual battle line. Every attempt to escape created another opening. The columns stretched for miles. Units could not see one another. Orders failed to travel. Men fought without knowing where the rest of the army had gone. Over several days, the Roman force was destroyed. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions disappeared from the army forever. Their numbers were never reused. When Roman forces returned years later, they found bones scattered across the ground and human heads fixed to tree trunks. The Roman army expected a battlefield. It found a trap that moved with the landscape. The Battle of the Caudine Forks, 321 BC, was even more humiliating because almost no one had to die. During Rome's war with the Samnites, 2 Roman consuls marched into a narrow mountain pass in southern Italy. The Samnites had blocked both entrances with trees, earth, and stones. The Roman army entered before realizing the exits were sealed. Once the soldiers understood what had happened, the mountains were already occupied by the enemy. There was no space to deploy. No open field for a counterattack. No route for cavalry. The Roman commanders ordered attempts to break through, but every movement only exposed more soldiers to the heights above. The army was trapped. The Samnites could have slaughtered the Romans. Instead, they chose humiliation. The consuls surrendered, and the entire army was forced to pass beneath a symbolic yoke made from spears. Rome lost no great battle that day. It lost its dignity. The Romans were released only after agreeing to harsh terms. But the Senate later rejected the treaty, and the humiliation became a national wound. The legions were not destroyed by steel. They were defeated by a locked road. Edessa, AD 260, showed that a Roman army could disappear without being annihilated on a battlefield. Emperor Valerian led a massive force into the east against the Persian king Shapur I. The campaign was supposed to restore Roman power after years of invasion. Instead, disease spread through the army. Supply lines weakened. The Romans became trapped near the city of Edessa while Persian forces surrounded them. The exact details remain disputed, but the result is not. Valerian was captured, along with much of his army. Roman emperors were not supposed to become prisoners. Their armies were not supposed to surrender to foreign kings. Yet an emperor and thousands of soldiers fell into Persian hands. Shapur later presented Valerian as a defeated captive. Roman soldiers were reportedly transported east and used in construction projects. A Roman army marched toward Persia expecting glory. It became forced labor. Adrianople, AD 378, destroyed the old Roman belief that heavy infantry always controlled the battlefield. Emperor Valens confronted a large Gothic force near the city of Adrianople. The Romans believed the Goths were exhausted and close to surrender. Their wagons formed a defensive circle, and their leaders were negotiating. Valens decided to attack before reinforcements from the west arrived. The decision was made under extreme heat. Roman soldiers marched for hours across dry ground without enough water. Their formations arrived piecemeal. Some units attacked before others were ready. Then Gothic cavalry appeared. They had been away gathering supplies, but returned at the critical moment. Their mounted attack struck the Roman flank and rear while the infantry was already engaged. The Roman line began to fold. The soldiers could not retreat because their own formations blocked the roads. Officers lost control. Units collided in the dust. The cavalry pressed inward until the entire Roman army became a crowded mass. Emperor Valens disappeared during the fighting. His body was never conclusively identified. Ancient accounts claim that perhaps 2/3 of the Roman field army was lost, including many senior officers. The defeat shocked the empire because the Goths had not defeated Rome through superior siege engines or elaborate tactics. They had waited. Then they attacked the moment the Roman army was tired, thirsty, and disorganized. Sometimes the strongest army in the world only needs to be made uncomfortable. The fate of Legio 9th Hispana remains one of Rome's most persistent mysteries. The 9th Legion fought in Britain, survived the revolt of Boudica, and was stationed at York. Then the records stop. For centuries, historians believed the legion marched north into Scotland and was destroyed by local tribes. The story became famous because it fit the image of a proud Roman unit vanishing at the edge of the known world. But later inscriptions found near Nijmegen suggested that the 9th may have survived longer than once believed. Its final fate could have involved a later war, possibly in the eastern provinces. No ancient writer gives a clear account of its destruction. No surviving inscription explains the final march. The legion may have been annihilated in Britain. It may have been transferred and lost elsewhere. It may have been reorganized, renamed, or quietly dissolved after heavy losses. Rome recorded victories in stone. It did not always record how its soldiers disappeared. The destruction of Roman legions was rarely caused by one simple weakness. At Cannae, the army was trapped by its own density. At Carrhae, mobility defeated armor. In Germania, the forest destroyed formation and communication. At Edessa, disease and captivity accomplished what a battlefield could not. At Adrianople, heat, thirst, and timing broke an army before its weapons became decisive. The Roman legion was not invincible. It was a system, and every system depended on conditions. It needed space to form, roads to march, water to drink, orders to receive, officers to survive. Enemies willing to stand close enough to be killed roamed one of those conditions, and the famous Roman machine began to malfunction. Roamed several, and an entire legion could vanish. The strange lesson is that Rome's greatest armies were not always destroyed by stronger armies. Some were destroyed by terrain, some by weather, some by distance, some by arrogance, and some by the assumption that the next battle would look like the last one. That assumption buried thousands of Roman soldiers beneath forests, deserts, mountains, and forgotten roads. The empire survived many defeats. The legions did not always survive with it.